All right, so this is a brief audio review of Sex and Gender Through the Prism of Difference. Okay, so the authors proposed a need to kind of look for a more complex and accurate analysis of human relationships. And they suggest that we do this by looking at social constructs through a prism, right, or a sort of continuum. So to analyze the full spectrum, that people, basically each one of us is this prism. And this can show us how certain social facts like gender, right? How gender's organized and experienced, but very differently when it's refracted through the prism of sexual, racial, ethnic, social class, physical ability, age, national citizenship, and all sorts of other factors. So early women's studies really was trying to attack this categorical view of women and men, right? All these generalizations that when we say, women this and women that, or men this and men that, we really have to say, well, which men, which women, right? In the 60s and 70s, a lot of these studies focus on the differences, right, between men and women, but really essentialized men and women as two concrete, uniform, monolithic groups. But that's just not the reality, right? And this assumed duality in essentialism. So again, the concept of gender itself comes with an assumed duality of you're this or you're that. And at the macro level, this is seen in differences in social institutions, right? So in the economy, you're this or you're that. In politics, in religion, among others. So at a micro level, it's also seen in interpersonal relationships and the distinctions that we make in our culture between men and women. And so those things structure our social relationships, right? Which actually makes men and women different because they experience the world differently in the way they're treated and the way they're, valued. So as a result, this kind of basis of men's power and domination, it comes from the essence of gender, from the organization of gender in society. So the original aim of women's studies was to make women's lives visible and to focus on the ways that women shared, certain social problems or certain issues under patriarchy, such as the responsibility of housework and childcare, the fear of men's sexual violence, lack of formal access to education, right? Exclusion in high status professional jobs, political office, and religious leadership, right? But again, it's important to move past these distinctions, right? So these voices of other women, right? The view of women as an oppressed group was empowering for certain groups of women, as some women began to claim that the feminist view of universal sisterhood really ignores marginalized women and their major concerns that might be different from the dominant group. So gender was treated as a generic category, uncritically applied to all women. Ironically, it was meant to unify women. Like the book The Feminine Mystique, right, kind of comes out of this time period, where it was obviously an important milestone in women's studies because it argued that women really needed to move out of the kitchen and into the workplace. It resonated with many college-aged, educated, you know, um, white women, right? But this liberation seemed absurd to many working class women and women of color who had been working for generations. For these women, liberation meant organizing in their communities and workplaces for better schools, better pay, decent benefits. So for women marginalized by more than their gender, right, they can kind of see how the power relations that create difference among women and the way that privileged women play the part of oppression in oppression against other women that have some other marginalized statuses, right? So for women of color, for working class women, lesbians, for women that just exist outside of the US or that US focus or don't have that national identity. The focus on male domination became a distraction from the connections of those other oppressions. All right, so obviously, when we look at the idea of gender, we often focus on women, but we forget that obviously men also have a gender, right? And these core ideas of feminism are really the connection of social constructionism, right? To understand how we can see and view the, masculinity as a social construct, not just as something that someone might identify as, but as a social force in society that tells someone how to behave and what's expected. So part of this social construction is that masculinity itself is not fixed or biological, meaning it is, obviously constructed by the culture, by its values, by its history. So power is very central to understanding gender because it's a relational construct that has everything to do with power, expressing difference, expressing superiority over anything that's feminine. right? So, and really, even when we try to essentialize men as the same, there's really no singular male sex role. There's various masculinities going on in a culture at any time. So, hegemonic masculinity is constructed in relation to subordinated masculinities, meaning masculinity itself is gendered, is racialized, is social class based, is all of these things at the same time through that same prism of difference. So, meaning that othering of racial masculinities as well as social class and sexual constructs form dominant masculinity. So they're all connected. So in an international context, the increase of transnational trade, international migration, and global systems of production means that, we're now coming in contact with different cultural value systems when it comes to gender, and the significance of those national borders is really receding. So this has a lot to do with the way that our kind of patriarchal notions that have worked their way into social institutions have really affected the global economic restructuring in the world that's going on because of globalization, right? So women's paid and unpaid labor isn't just a key to capitalism in this country, it's a key to global redevelopment strategies all over the world, right? So meaning there's a lot of women that work in domestic work that send their remittances home so that they can support their families, right? Also, I have a couple videos here that I'm going to add in. Hopefully YouTube won't censor them out or tell me that I'm not allowed to post them. We'll see. But, or even one of the authors of this reading wrote a book called Domesticas that was basically chronicling the experiences of women that were working in domestic labor in Brentwood and Bel Air and, in Hollywood Hills, and talked about the kind of, problems and issues that they face that have so much to do with their economic context, their national origin, their racial ethnic group, and how gender is a large factor in it, but that to understand their oppression, you have to understand it in those connected factors, right? And how their labor just supports and props up the idealization of, certain kinds of women, meaning that these rich celebrity Bel Air, Brentwood white women are able to successfully look like the perfect put together mother, the perfect put together, spouse, but that's because someone else is actually doing the labor. So the connection between their idealized nature has always been connected to the need for domestic servants, the need for someone to actually do the labor.
The employer said, we're going to London. I don't know what is London. I don't know what is look like London. In the Qatar is worse, but here it's more worse. Every day she's shouting, he's hitting.
She keep pushing on my mind that you are just slave for me. I'm always sick. I'm starving.
We work that it's almost 24 hours. I decided to run.
We are here to meet this lady. I talked to her on the phone last night.
We're looking for another Filipino domestic worker for a wealthy Gulf employer in London. She says she's being abused and not paid or fed properly. Sheila is an activist who helps women like Maria and Adele escape.
She's hungry. She didn't have food for the whole day. She showed me that she gave her bread. She took a picture of it. The bread is stale.
This would have been the 47th woman that Sheila's organisation has helped in the last 2 years. But she's got cold feet.
She sent me a text message. Yung lalaki na employer ko kasi.
She's gone back to her employer.
Yeah, she cancelled our meeting today. And I am worried.
Every year, thousands of overseas domestic workers are brought to the UK. They cook, clean and look after the children of their employers, who are typically wealthy and from the Gulf states. But they're also tied to them, following changes to the visa system in 2012. This leaves many open to shocking abuse behind the doors of some of London's wealthiest streets and hotels.
I think hotel is a 5-star, but they doesn't know that I'm not eating inside that hotel. They doesn't know that I'm sleeping on the ground. They doesn't know that only biscuit is my meal.
Adele ran away from her Saudi employers this year. When they made her visa application to come to the UK, she says she didn't know what she was signing or where she was going.
The driver took me in a building, I don't know that building, and then the secretary of my boss is there. Then he told me to sign papers. I want to read it, but he got angry to me. He said, I have no rights to read the paper. Just sign. So what will I do? I sign.
Adele was brought to London, where she says her passport and salary were kept from her and she was made to work more than 20 hours a day.
I'm just slave. I'm almost 24 hours, 7 days, without resting, without money in my pocket. I feel their power for me.
Even if you are physically abused, verbally abused, and even if you are sexually abused, you can't change employer. You're already tied to your employer, to the slave master. We, all of us, said we have to make it more organized. We have to do more work.
Sheila and her colleague Eva are going to meet another runaway.
She is exploited. She's going to run away from her employer. We've learned that she's only paid £50 a week, and she's not allowed to go out. She has no anything to communicate with other people.
Running away is a harder decision since domestic workers' right to change employer was taken away in 2012.
It's 9:28.
Okay.
So these are tense occasions, and all Sheila and Eva can do now is wait.
The employers always telling me, you can not run to me because I'm going to take you to the police, like that, you're going to the jail. So you're very scared. Sheila and Bing, they told me that you are human. You don't have to scare, you have to fight like that. You have to fight because you're a victim.
Why?
I want to stay here.
Why? Do you have a boyfriend here
No.
now? Start looking. There's a Burger King round the corner.
The women have been organising and are holding events to boost their confidence and fight for a change in the law.
I don't understand why or what I have done to be put in jail.
When I see women speaking about our rights, it inspires us, and for me, it gives me more strength, and we will never stop. We will keep on fighting for our rights.
The government says trafficking victims can seek protection under its new system. Adele has come forward to do this, but fears she might be punished for doing the right thing. Even if she is successful, she might only be given 6 months leave to remain.
All the pressure, all the is really make me sick every time. It's not easy because right now I cannot work. I'm not allowed to work. We who ran away after 2013, it's like we are a criminal that the immigration keep hunting. They don't know really what happened to us. How was our life under the Saudian employer. I want to show to the government that why not give mercy on us.
This time, the migrant worker does go ahead with her escape. Now the question is, how long will she and her fellow victims have to keep running?
I think British people, they are kind-hearted, they are humanitarian. That's my belief, that something good will happen if only they become aware of what is happening.
Often vulnerable and exploited, domestic workers have long faced discrimination, low wages and extremely long hours. For years, policymakers have maintained it would be impossible to change the status quo, that employers can't afford to pay their cleaners, maids and babysitters a minimum wage, and that isolated as they are, domestic workers would never be able to form a union. But since the ILO adopted the Domestic Workers Convention in 2011, there's been a sea change in attitudes. The first European country to ratify the convention, Italy is one of the few places where workers and employers have organised and have the right to bargain collectively. Sara Gomez is the spokesperson for Fieldcam's union in Rome. She says joining a union gives individuals a louder voice.
Posso dire che mi sono trovate delle
I can say that I met workers who, when they took the membership card to the trade union, cried because they felt they were recognized as part of something, and this gave them strength.
Yet Philcams is still fighting for equality. Unlike most people, domestic workers don't have the right to more than 15 days consecutive sick leave, even though their work can be grueling.
How are you?
Oh, things are so-so. They don't respect our rights, even when we're ill.
Are you working now?
No, I'm not working anymore. I went through very stressful times, and my employer was too demanding. Even when I had a fever, I had to go to work.
Are you on unemployment benefit? Do you get it?
Oh yes, thank God. And also thanks to the fact I called you. Otherwise, I really couldn't handle it anymore. I was feeling too bad.
There's also work to be done on incapacity benefits. Evelyn Belalta arrived from Guatemala 17 years ago and has been working for Dr. Carlo ever since. She's developed a painful foot condition and wants to take early retirement on health grounds. She was shocked when she learned her occupational injury may lead to serious disability.
I'm a very active person. I like to be on the go, to work, not only in order to earn money, but really because I like to work. And at the moment when I heard about my injury, for me, it was like as if my life was ending.
Italy is one of the few countries with an employers' association founded as a result of the historically strong workers' unions. Domina helps families with the bureaucratic formalities of employing a carer or cleaner, drawing up the contract and making sure all the correct contributions are made. Clearly, it simplifies things for families, but it also means both sides agree on terms and conditions.
Il lavoro più grande di Domina in questo momento storico è
The biggest work for Domina in this historical period is to create a culture for domestic work in Italy. Italy was the first European country to sign the ILO Convention, and this has been possible thanks to the work done by us together with the trade unions. It has been possible because Italy has worked for years in the field of domestic work in order to change domestic work into a dignified activity for the worker and affordable for the employer.
Dignitoso per il lavoratore e ovviamente accessibile per il datore di lavoro.
Domestic workers enjoy minimum wage coverage in at least 60 countries. However, in some places, it's lower than the minimum wage earned by other workers. In France, Italy, Austria, Belgium, and here in Geneva, the chèque service and similar schemes have proved it's perfectly possible to provide workers with social security benefits.
Le bénéfice pour un employé,
The benefits for an employee are the welfare payments. So whatever their country of origin or their situation in Switzerland, the person will benefit from welfare payments. So he or she will have life insurance. He or she will have the right to claim family allowance, maternity benefit, unemployment benefit. Well, except for those people who are in an illegal situation. Of course not. But maternity, accident insurance that we offer in the chèque service package.
L'assurance accident que nous offrons dans le package de chèque service.
However, it's thought only a third of domestic workers are hired via chèque service.
I think that even so, there are a number of employers who want to be in line with the law, to provide welfare payments. Then, and this is also where the chèque service scheme comes in, we guarantee a certain transparency regarding work relations. Rights and responsibilities must be explained. We're also very, very vigilant regarding the chèque service package, and this is perhaps the only penalty. We won't have people who don't pay the minimum wage, which is legal.
In Hong Kong, stories of abuse of domestic workers made the headlines in recent years, but for locals at least, conditions are improving. This is due in part to an innovative training centre set up with government funding. Here, local domestic workers receive quality training in postnatal care, household management, etc. And after they graduate, can apply for well-paid posts through the centre's job referral programme.
A lot of the people in Hong Kong who employ domestic helpers, they want them to be able to take care of newborn babies, small babies, and very old people, because it takes a lot of care and attention. If they are not careful, they can cause a lot of accidents.
All of these posts attract a decent wage, sometimes higher than the minimum wage. Fiona Lung used to work in a bank, but hopes the course will be the beginning of a new career for her.
After I've been trained in the centre, when I have experience, I can find a job like this as a domestic helper to take care of new babies. In fact, in Hong Kong, this profession will have a better future, so I wish to have a long-term development in this career.
But the scheme is only open to local domestic workers, not migrants who still work under draconian conditions, including the live-in rule, which means a worker must live with her employer. Sheila Estrada explains the abuses it can lead to.
When they come back, they still need us to open the door. They still need to, if they want to drink some tea or drink something, then they will just knock our doors, and then they can just say, we need to prepare something for them. And this is 24 hours in call.
Chatting and eating together on their one day off a week, stories abound among the migrant domestic workers of Hong Kong of ill treatment. Workers forced to sleep in the kitchen or on top of the washing machine, of too little food, of rip-off agency fees.
Cleaning, car washing, marketing, cooking, laundry, ironing, all of it inside the home for 18 hours. I need to serve them 3 times a day for their meals, and they will not stay out. So I need to be more patient for them.
Although there is still much to be done, changing people's mindsets is the first step. And this is happening with tangible benefits for tens of thousands of women and men.
And really just, the only other point I wanted to make was about international labor and migration. So meaning that it's not enough to only focus on middle-class white women and the issues that they face. It's important that we have more multiracial understandings of issues in society, but also see how our labor and our understandings of goods and services are connected to the oppression of people all over the world. Okay, so trying to redefine the study of gender, right, means that the voices of other women, women that are kind of marginalized, and the study of men and masculinities needs to be part of the examination of gender. Also in a transnational context, right, to help redefine the study of gender into something that's more accurate, something that reflects more fully the actual world we live in. So not only are masculinity and femininity relational, but different masculinities and femininities are interconnected through other social structures, again, such as race, class, and, your national origin. So the meaning of woman is defined by the existence of women at different races and classes. So just as masculinity and femininity each depend on the definition of the other to produce domination, differences among women and among men are also created in the context of structured relationships.